It's Nubian Boy Kenya.
The next question is from friends of mine in Kibra, the Nubian community and across the country. Could the Cabinet Secretary confirm whether there are any plans to issue a citizenship code recognizing the Nubian community as a Kenyan ethnic community and indicate the expected timelines for such issuance? And secondly, why do members of the Nubian community continue to face barriers in acquiring national identification documents, and what measures is the ministry taking to bring an end to this discrimination? Thirdly, Honorable Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary outline the measures the government is taking to expedite reparations to the Nubian community for historical land injustices occasioned by that lack of recognition? Thank you, Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the government, through the Directorate of National Registration Bureau, assigns unique ethnic identification codes to Kenyan communities. These codes enable individuals to declare their ethnicity when registered for national identity documents as required under Section 51D of the Registration of Persons Act. The recognition and coding of ethnic communities is a continuous and progressive process. At the inception of the manual first-generation national identity card system in 1978, individuals declared their ethnicity on registration forms. This information was recorded in the manual register but did not appear on the physical ID card. In 1995, with the introduction of the second-generation ID and the automated Kenya identity management system, it became necessary to create specific ethnic codes to capture the ethnic data electronically. Each ethnic community was assigned a unique code, while a generic code, other Kenyans, was provided for individuals whose communities were not yet listed among ethnic groups in the system. The Nubian community was initially registered the lack of communal code. Over time, the ministry has progressively reviewed and updated ethnic codes for additional communities, including sub-tribes that have asserted distinct ethnic identities separate from larger linguistic or cultural groups. As part of this ongoing progress, the Nubian community was officially assigned a distinct ethnic code, code number 50 in 2022, thereby recognizing them as a Kenyan ethnic community within the national registration framework. On part 2, Mr. Speaker, I am not aware of that member of Nubian community. I am not aware that members of Nubian community continue to face barriers in acquiring national identification documents. Indeed, His Excellency the President on 5th February 2025 directed the discontinuation of additional vetting requirements that had been applied during the registration and issuance of national identity documents to certain communities and individuals residing in specific regions of the country. The Nubian community was among the groups positively affected by this directive. Prior to this presidential directive, members of the Nubian community were subjected to a special vetting process that had been developed in consultation between the ministry and the Nubian community elders. This vetting mechanism required attestation of ID applicants by Nubian elders. The purpose of this arrangement was to help distinguish between Kenyan Nubians whose forebearers settled in the country before independence and migrant Nubians who continue to migrate to Kenya. Following the directive of His Excellency the President, this community-based vetting process was officially discontinued, and the Nubian community is now fully integrated into the standard national registration framework. Currently, the registration and issuance of national identification documents across the country, including the members of Nubian community, is conducted under the new uniform mechanism launched by the President to streamline and standardize the process nationwide. Under this mechanism, the identity of an applicant is authenticated by the present or guardian biological relatives through the embossing of the left thumbprint on the registration form. This is further validated by the thumbprint of the chief or assistant chief, ensuring local administration oversight. This standardized procedure applies uniformly in the registration, thereby ensuring equality, fairness, and the elimination of any form of discrimination in access to national identification documents. Honorable Speaker, members of the Nubian community have been registered and issued with national identification documents since the introduction of the first generation ID in 1978. While it is true that the Nubian community was initially categorized under the generic ethnic code Other Kenyans, Code 81. This did not in any way prevent members of the community from acquiring identification documents. Furthermore, the subsequent assignment of Code number 50 has reaffirmed their status as a duly recognized Kenyan ethnic community. With regard to the vetting process that was previously applied to members of the Nubian community, it is important to clarify that the vetting was not unique to the Nubian community. It was also applied to residents of all border counties and to communities living both in Kenya and in across the country's porous international borders. The purpose of this process was not to discriminate. Rather, it was an identity verification mechanism designed to ensure that national identification documents were issued exclusively to bona fide Kenyan citizens. It is with the sovereign responsibility of any state to institute appropriate measures to differentiate its citizens from non-citizens, particularly with regard to cross-border movement and settlement patterns. Given these facts, it could therefore not be accurate to claim that members of the Nubian community have been denied recognition as Kenyan citizens. The government has taken deliberate measures, including the abolition of the extra vetting requirements and the standardization of national registration process to ensure that all citizens, including the Nubian community, enjoy equal treatment and access to identification and citizenship services. Mr. Speaker, the government remains fully committed to promoting inclusion, equity, and fairness for all communities in Kenya. Through ongoing reforms in national registration and identity management process, the ministry continues to work collaboratively with relevant agencies to address and prevent any form of perceived historical marginalization. I thank you.
Speaker, I read this response and I was not satisfied, but I started first by correcting you that the Nubian community is spread all across the country. And in fact, part of the question was the discrimination in identity cards issuance. We were told that vetting had been removed, but in Kisii County, the reports are that they are still going through that vetting. Now, Speaker, the communication that I received from the CS is unsatisfactory for the following reasons. First of all, Honorable Speaker, it is not clear whether there is a formal recognition through something like a gazette notice or a communication. You see the response that he has given has no annexures at all. In 2016, when we were recognizing the Makonde community, Honorable Speaker, there was a full ceremony. There was a full ceremony. So what the Nubian community is saying, if you have issued a code, you have done it silently, do we have any document? Is it going to be gazetted? Is there going to be a formal ceremony? Does the issuance of a code now recognize them as the 50th community in Kenya? Those are the reasons why we are saying, Honorable Speaker, this is not a satisfactory response. Let him add those specific details. And lastly, on the question of land, there was a court ruling in 2015 that required the restitution of the remaining 3,000 acres of land or appropriate reparations to the community to be done. The CS has not addressed himself to that question of land restitution. So let him provide those two clarifications. Will we see a gazette notice? Will there be a formal response? Is there any formal document saying that they have now been recognized, or is just the word of mouth of the CS constitute them as the 50th community in the country? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I think Senator Sifuna is confusing recognition in terms of as a standalone community with citizenship. The reason why ceremonies were done for the Shonas, the Pemba, the Makondes, is because they were gaining citizenship. The Nubians were not gaining citizenship. They were being recognized as a standalone tribe in Kenya. And that has happened so many communities, and it's ongoing. Like even now, I have an application in my office from the Mara community, from Tarakaniti. They want to be recognized as standalone from the Nidis, that they want to be recognized independently, and so forth. And it goes through a process of vetting, consultation, public participation, and so forth. For the Nubians, as I read in the statement, they were already Kenyans, and they were recognized